Al Jazeera's Marwan Bishara, our senior political analyst, is with us live from London. Marwan, it's great to talk to you, and I really wanted your perspective because it's hard to know in the moment what we're looking at. You could tell me that the opposition advance we're seeing is temporary and will be reversed, or you could tell me that this really is the beginning of the end for Bashar al-Assad. Either way, I don't know, and I could believe you. How do you look at this?
Well, look, in terms of where we're going forward, though, it will always be good to know where we're coming from. But in terms of going forward, as your graphic just shown and demonstrated, Homs will be the inflection point. Homs will be the game changer in Syria. Although Aleppo and Hama are very two important cities in the northern part of Syria, as you said, Homs is the heart of Syria. It's the gateway to Damascus. It's the military heart, it's the financial heart, it's the economic heart, it's just the geographic heart, and it's just the most important, if you will, in terms of what we are looking for next. If the fighters, if the militants are able to take on Homs, the governance, then the 150, 160 kilometers to Damascus will be a short distance to the capital. So what will happen the next few days is incredibly important. That's why I expect the regime to be putting its weight against the militants in Homs in particular, because with the pressure coming from the south and the north, it's going to be just a question of time for Damascus to be encirculated by the militants.
Well, that's really interesting. And a reminder to our viewers that our correspondent Rasul Sardar was saying at the top of the show that opposition fighters have stopped a few kilometers outside of Homs and they're building up their military capabilities before they launch what we expect will be a full assault on Homs. Let's talk about Iran and Russia. They are the two main backers of Bashar al-Assad. They really are the reason he is still in power. And yet they are not rushing in, it seems, to support him militarily or otherwise. What do you see there?
Look, what you call, and people like to call the stakeholders, as it were, those with stakes in Syria, have all been weakened. All are preoccupied with more important affairs. I think the most important stakeholder here is not Russia. Russia really has a lot on its hands in Ukraine. It is by itself under Western siege and what have you. I think Iran feels that Syria is the most important prize of all. Of course, it has major influence in Iraq, but if Syria is lost, then that's a huge loss for Iran and its regional influence and prestige. So I think Iran will try to put its weight. But as you've heard from the press conference with the Syrian, Iranian, and Iraqi foreign ministers, the Iraqis are not rushing either. They're talking about humanitarian aid, but they're not talking at all about sending in the troops. In fact, Ahmad Ashraf, or Ahmad Shara, Ahmad al-Julani have already asked the Iraqis certainly not to send the popular mobilization, the Shiite-based forces in Iraq, because that would certainly lead to major bloodshed both in Syria and perhaps eventually in Iraq. So I think, yes, as you said, a lot of the stakeholders are hesitant. Everyone is more or less observing than acting. But I think in the end of the day, I find it hard to imagine that everyone, I'm talking about everyone, including everyone from the Gulf to Moscow and from Tehran to Washington, are simply going to let the regime fall tomorrow and for the militants to take over without anyone understanding where are things going, what is the roadmap, and what is the future lies for this hugely important country in West Asia, in the East Mediterranean. So I think something got to give in the next few days, whereby those stakeholders are going to be discussing in Doha, as they do in Baghdad, perhaps tomorrow in Ankara and Washington, what to do and how they can find a third way between Assad and the new militants, because Assad cannot stay and the new militants cannot simply just take over without knowing what they're up to.
Well, that's the question that your point raises, right? Your point is well taken. You're saying the people who are invested in Syria, directly or indirectly, and regional powers, they're not going to want to just drop Assad without knowing what the plan B is, right? But unless they go in, unless they prop him up militarily, which they don't seem to be in a rush to do, as we said, then, there aren't a million ways to support Assad other than that.
Look, there's this other thing, right? It's important. It's not directly geopolitical, but Assad has proven to be a major liability. I mean, the man is stubborn, is cynical, and frankly, stupid, judging from his 25 years of experience, because each and every time he failed and had an opportunity, he just wasted it. Look, just quickly, right? In 2000, when he first took over, there was what we called the Damascus Spring. Imagine a decade before the Arab Spring, there was a Damascus Spring. And everyone built hope that Bashar al-Assad, the young president, is going to really invest in liberalizing the regime, opening it up, and so on and so forth. Instead, he cracked down on everyone in 2001 and 2002. After he had to leave, had to withdraw from Lebanon in 2005, 5 years later, everyone expected he might now liberalize, open up, democratize the regime. Instead, he cracked down in 2006. The same happened in 2011, when the Arab Spring actually finally broke out. Instead of working out with the opposition that was peaceful, he cracked down like there was no tomorrow, ended up killing some 500,000 people. When the Russians came in and helped him out along with the Iranians, by 2017, when he was in control of most of Syria, instead of opening up, liberalizing, doing anything, instead, he cracked down even more, turned his back to Turkey, turned back to the rest. Just a couple of years ago, when the Arab world started opening up and Turkey opened up, and President Erdogan asked of him to meet up to figure out what's next for Turkey and Syria, he refused. He rejected. Again, stubborn, aggressive, and arrogance. But it's that arrogance that breeds stupidity. 25 years of squandered chances for him to liberalize, to open up, to democratize Syria, and he wouldn't do that. So today we ended up with Syria being bankrupt morally, politically, financially, economically, and in every other way, allowing for the militants to step in and for the allies to say, why exactly do we want to save this man again?
Marwan Bishara, Al Jazeera's senior political analyst. Thank you very much.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news from Al Jazeera.